Alrighty, guys. Today we are talking about the Life in Ruin competition event for Turnip 28 and my entry for it. What is this event? It is like a kit bashing competition where you are either making something for the Baron's dastardly attackers or the so-called noble defenders of geets. So I am going to be making an Alice and Mole as my siege weapon entry. And as of the writing of this script or recording of this, the competition has already been over for multiple days. So if you want to participate, you're going to have to get some plutonium from the Libyans and then power your flux capacitor or whatever. Okay, let's get on with the build. Originally, I was going to make a great proboscis for this contest, but I had very grandiose ambitions for that build, and it was going to end up becoming a mega project that would probably take a month to make. And after the Turnip Palaces, I only left myself a week for this competition, which is why I'm making an Alice and a Mole instead. So I was looking through the STLs of Giants, and I saw this guy wearing a hound skull bassinet, which is an iconic part of the Turnip aesthetic, so I decided he would be perfect for the base model for this build. Then I found this Lady Alice STL, and it's free, which is awesome and amazing, but then I printed it out and I realized it was a little bit on the Kingdom Death end of the proportion spectrum.
Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon.
So, but as long as we keep the total Gunnar bait volume to less than 5% of this build, I think we'll be fine. I'm adding some cork to his base to give us some height and to make some cracks that I will later fill in with resin to make puddles. Also, I had something that I wanted to say about my turnip houses that I forgot. Here is my headcanon to justify why they are the way that they are. Every homeowner in Sist is a chronic hoarder, and all their buildings become like the Collier Brothers house, where they get filled to the brim with random junk, and people need to make tunnels in order to get from room to room. And then this is why their windows are randomly placed, because they just sort of punch them out wherever they need more light and air. Here I am gluing on various bits and bobs and then cutting off other bits and bobs. And here I thought it would be funny to put a tiny torso above his giant-sized torso. And I am making him a backpack out of a piece of packaging foam and some cheesecloth that I'm cutting up and gluing together. Here I am mixing up a little bit of a Tamiya epoxy putty, and I found an old GW wolf head that I thought looked cool, so I figured I would throw that on here somewhere too. In my lump off video, someone told me that I should have added a big ol' honkin' witch nose to Wendy the Wendigo, and I was like, you are 100% right. So to make up for my previous error, I'm going to give this guy 2 noses. One on his face and one on his knee. And I am now realizing they kind of look like Venetian masks, which I think would be a really cool look for a turnip army. I am going to have to store that one in the idea bank for later. Now, to attach the model to our base, we are going to use a little bit of a cyanoacrylate.
Actually, dude, it's salt.
That's what I said. Sodium chloride.
Dude, that would be salt.
That's what I said. Sodium chloride. That's what I said. Sodium chloride.
Disaster has struck. Oh, I broke his flail off. Why, God, why would you do this to me? How could you do this?
Where were you when I laid the Earth's foundation?
Well, fine, dude. If you're gonna be like that, I'll figure something out. Jesus Christ, dude, you're so overdramatic. But actually this is fine, because this will give me a chance to make a sick-looking axe cannon hybrid weapon thing. Let's add a Christmas wire to be the fuse. This shield will add some nice depth. A little cardstock will make a nice trigger guard. We will make a hole for the barrel. And we'll glue all that on. Next, we are taking some coffee stirrer sticks to make a platform for Our Lady to sit on. Here I am making a belt of masking tape. Shout out to Peachy Tips for that idea. And I'll glue on a dwarven rune to be a belt buckle. And what are dwarves from? Warhammer. And what else is from Warhammer? That's right, the Storm of Chaos. Many ages ago, when the ancient world was not quite so ancient, in the dark age of 2004, Games Workshop created a narrative campaign event known as the Storm of Chaos. Players would play games at their FLGSs for either the Forces of Order or the Hordes of Chaos, and they would report their results of whoever won to G-Dubs, and depending on who won, they would get more points, and then GW would release these lore map updates every week of like what faction was in control of which area. Though it is generally agreed that GW just ended up ignoring the results of the battles. Chaos was just getting smoked the entire time, and then G-Dubs just decided that Chaos was going to win in the end anyway. At least that's my understanding, but it doesn't really matter because all of that got deleted with the end times anyway. And also, despite it being more rigged than the election of Rutherford B. Hayes, everything that I've heard about sounds like people really liked it and had a ton of fun with it. Well, except for maybe the lore implications, but other than that, everyone seemed to really like all of it. And I get the sense that this Turnip 28 Life in Ruin competition has some of the DNA of the Storm of Chaos. But I love that this one is crafting based because I have basically infinite opportunities to do crafting, but I have basically zero opportunities to play the game. And I do wish that I had more free time during the span of this contest so that I really could have sunk my teeth into those weekly challenges that were being posted, but I basically went all in on just the one for the main competition piece. And I know that Turnip doesn't really get specific about its own lore very intentionally, but I would have loved to have seen like a campaign battle map where the two forces are pushing and pulling against each other and taking different areas of the city or what have you. Then again, I guess you very easily could run into the exact same problem that the Storm of Chaos ran into, where one side is just getting crushed before you even get into the meat of the event. But on the other hand, I think it would be a very funny meta satire that would feel very turnipy if you set up this entire grand narrative campaign just for one side to get so utterly and thoroughly trounced right at the start that you just end the entire event after the first week, especially after hyping it up as this mega 3-month-long extravaganza. I think that would be a good bit. Here I am gluing on a few 3D printed mushrooms. Next, I am adding a couple of pieces of construction paper which will become patches on his tabard. And now I am applying a muddy concoction all over the floor, or, well, his floor. I also feel like I'm missing something, and that something is spikes, so I'm going to use the ends of toothpicks and glue those on. This here is what they call an index card. I've decided this is what I'm going to use as the material for my banner, which I was quite pleasantly surprised with how it worked out, so I think I'm going to continue to do that in the future, maybe? And the words on this banner are going to read, "We all hate geets scum," which is a reference to a football chant, or so I'm told. The entirety of my knowledge of football comes from 40k orcs, so if this doesn't actually work for whatever reason, blame the orcs, I guess, I don't know. I saw someone else write geets or bust for their model, and I thought, oh, that is so perfect. And I was very sorely tempted to steal that for my model, but at the last minute I decided to go with the We All Hate Geets scum. Finally, we can break out the airbrush and watch our guy get blacked. I am starting off with a dry brush of bright ivory. This will help me establish a little bit of texture and get some pre-highlights on those hard-to-reach bits. Then I am zenithaling with the white ink. And now we can start the most exciting part of the crafting process. Applying our base coat. Yay. While I apply this base coat, let me talk a little bit about the theory behind some of my design choices here. I was worried that this guy was looking a little too epic for Turnip with his BFG 9000 and his axe that could cut a cow in half, so I tried to make him look a little more pathetic by giving him a tiny little left hand that he'd have to use the entirety of to pull the trigger of his cannon, which I thought would be a fun image. Those rooty stem bits are made out of twisted together coconut fiber, which is my new favorite thing in the world. They just add so much texture and volume and add an immense amount to that goblin core vibe. And I'm trying to do a little bit of storytelling here with the base. The story being that Mole just cut a dude in half, or in thrice, and is getting his dog to retrieve the dead dude's weapon to add it to his collection. I will admit the blocking of this scene is a little cramped. I don't think the movement of all the various pieces here is as natural as I ideally would have liked, but I think it's good enough to get the point across. And there are also these 3 categorical laws of Turnip design. 1, the scale is 28mm, obviously. 2, technology must be around 1812-ish. And 3, last but not least, visors down, which I am very explicitly breaking with this guy, but I'm hoping that the scarf will work as an alternative means of retaining the mystery of the Turnip denizens' faces, appearances. I'm doing a little bit of an experiment here. I saw Mr. Miscast using some watercolor pencils on one of his projects, and I thought it looked great, so I figured I would give it a shot. So I'm using a blue pencil here to draw some veins on this mole's necrotized skin. And I think I've realized that this technique looks great if you're trying to depict scratches on like panels or flat surfaces or something, but on the rounded surface of this giant's muscularity, I definitely think I might have been better off with just a good old classic brush. I am putting some paint on the dog here.
Right there. What the dog doing?
In the style of a piebald chestnut and white English bulldog. This dog, STL, is from Captain Wolfgang's Insatiable Strays from the Turnip Patreon. And here I'm just putting little squiggly lines all over the banner, which is a design that I'm stealing from John Blanche, which kind of looks a little bit like filigree, maybe? I honestly don't really know what it's supposed to be depicting, I just love the way that it looks. Here I am painting little blue flowers, or at least trying to paint little blue flowers, on the teapot to make it look like a 15th century Ming Dynasty blue and white porcelain Victorian style pottery piece deal. Here I'm painting up the belt, for which I'm following this Redditor's tutorial for how he did the leather on his orc knob, and I think it is the best looking leather I have ever seen on any mini, and I don't think I did it anywhere near as good as him, but, well, maybe I think I got like maybe 80% of the way there. This here is the old ball stylus trick for making perfectly circular pupils. And this is where catastrophe number 2 struck. But this one was like a for realsies catastrophe instead of a fake catastrophe. I panicked and I just wanted the mini to look done, so I slathered the entire thing with a wash. I swear to God, if anyone ever catches me dunking a mini in wash again, just take my foot, break off 3 of my toes and scream in my face telling me that if I ever wash another mini like that again, you're going to break off the other 2 toes. But we have to keep marching forward. Couple of highlights for the skin. Couple of highlights for the red. Some dirty down rust for the metal. Couple of yellow highlights. Then I'm doing a cross hatching of yellow on the fabric here to make it look like a cloth texture. And I wanted to push those red highlights just a little bit further. And here I am freehanding some stitches to connect those patches to the tabard. I'm using a toothpick to put the white dots on mushrooms. Here I'm picking out a couple of pure white highlights. I'm sponging some shining silver onto the metal. Highlights on the dog. Here I'm using a pink paint to add some flowers to the dress of Miss Lady Alice, but it's pretty hard to see against the white, so I'm thinking now maybe I should have given them an outline with a darker color or something along those lines. A little bit of verdigris for the browns. I'm glazing on a purple tone to push the shadows on all the undersides of the mini. I'm cutting off a little sliver of plastic to use as a big old dripping down blood drop. Couple more varieties in the shades of rust. Here I'm dry brushing on my very shiniest plata on the blade of his axe. A little bit of DB for the mud too. I'm painting on some wood grain to all the wood pieces, but I'm starting to get a little lazy at this point because I'm getting really close to the end and I just want this guy to be done already. Here I'm dripping down some UV resin from my little plastic sliver. And I am dousing everything in brown pigment powder. Well, not everything, like all the lower parts of everything. Here I'm using Der Alleskleber UV glue to make some stringy, gory bits. Now we can put some true blood on our gore effects. That poor dead soldier must have had as much blood as him in an anime character, at least judging from how much blood is dripping down from this axe. Time to fill in those puddles with some resin. Gotta break out the stroking grime so that we can kind of jam it into any of those areas that I might have missed or kind of just want to cover up. And once we've rimmed our guy nice and well, he is ready for the money shot. This is kind of like my 1 rep max for mini painting. I just kind of went all out, tried as hard as I could, and I gotta admit, it's a little bit demoralizing to then go on YouTube and watch other people paint minis, not even for competitions, just random projects, and watch them paint stuff way better than this. It's like barely being able to eke out a single rep of 180 pounds just to look to your side and see a guy just banging out 225 for a warm-up. That having been said, I am far more happy than I am demoralized. I definitely made a couple of mistakes. I think I could have pushed the contrast a little further, but I am extremely excited to have this guy in my collection. I do love these competitions and having them as an excuse to really see just how good I can paint a mini. I definitely see some improvements since the last one, and I was a really big fan of the faction war aspect of this most recent contest. I will say, as a game piece, he's probably not ideal. He does not have a single part that is easy to pick him up and move him around from. He is absolutely covered in delicate, spindly little glued on bits that are very easy to snap off. And yes, I did immediately drop him after painting him and break him. I will say, Alice and Mole's whole thing is supposed to be that they are weapon collectors, and I only added 14 extra weapons to this model, which sounds like a lot, but they kind of just got lost in the detail. I think I could have bumped that number up to getting like 25 weapons attached to him. Overall, this guy is easily my new favorite turnip mini. Well, actually, probably my new favorite mini at all I've ever made. And I will just like sit down and stare at him for minutes at a time and not even be bored, just actually feel satisfied. And the results of the competition have not yet come in, at least as far as I'm aware, but I do believe it has ended, and boy howdy, let me tell you, if Geets is still standing by the end of this, I am going to be writing a very strongly worded letter to whoever was in charge of this whole siege operation. Anyway, that's it. Video over. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.